I will never give a movie with Dennis Quaid above a 4.
Oh,
He did a good job.
He did fine.
I don't care.
Exactly what it was supposed to do.
It's principle. Sometimes it's just principle. Sometimes
What if it was Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford can get a higher score because he's a good actor.
That's true.
You don't think it's more impressive when a bad actor does a good job?
No, because he only did a good job because he's a bad actor. He was just doing what he would normally do.
He was supposed to be a bad actor in the movie.
They were like, if this is a drama, this is how he would have played it too. So like that's the problem.
It is nice to see a studio actually recognize, like, all right, we need someone to be an insufferable, absolute asshole in this movie. All right, get the insufferable asshole in here.
What is going on, everybody? It is time for another HTGS review, and I am excited because this is one of the movies that people were talking about nonstop this entire spooky season. We are reviewing The Substance, but before we do that, I'm your host, Rob Coakley, joined as always by Dave Wilkins.
Hello, Rob Coakley.
And Jesse Wilkins.
Let's get into it.
And I'm excited. Dave, before we jump into this movie, can you give us the substance, the synopsis?
The synopsis is pretty good.
The synopsis works, right?
Yes. The Substance 2024, directed by Coralie Fargeat. I don't know how to say her name. Elizabeth Sparkle, renowned for an aerobics show, faces a devastating blow on her 50th birthday as her boss fires her. Amid her distress, a laboratory offers her a substance which promises to transform her into an enhanced version of herself. So before we get into this, I do want to offer you this warning that this review will be full of spoilers. So it is a new movie, and if you haven't seen it yet, you should go see it if you're into really fucked up movies. And we're going to spoil it. So here we go to go do that. So I actually didn't hear anything about this movie, Rob, until you said, can we please watch this? And
really?
Yeah, I hadn't seen any buzz about it, and I went into it completely blind, not knowing what to expect. All I knew is today, I literally watched this movie a couple hours ago, and I pulled it up on Amazon or whatever it was. It was like a 2-hour, 21-minute runtime. I'm like, guys, what the fuck are we doing? Why are we doing this with this ridiculously long movie? But this movie hit like an old school 1980s David Cronenberg body horror. It felt like an 80s movie. It had 80s vibes, just the way they used to do body horror back then. And I will say that while I was initially annoyed that this had a 2-hour and 21-minute runtime, I didn't think it dragged for a single second. It kept me interested the entire time, and it was a really, really, really awesome fucking movie. I loved every second of this movie.
I knew you were gonna love
this. I fucking loved it. I loved it right up. We're gonna get to it all, but I loved it. I loved the ending.
I knew you would. I knew you would love this movie.
I love this movie so much. This is probably going to be a contender for one of my favorite horror movies of 2024, if not my favorite one so far. So I can't wait to get into it because I have no clue what you guys are going to think about it, because this is just a wild movie.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that was like, it felt like a Black Mirror episode. But if it was a Black Mirror episode, I would have been pissed, because it would have been like, this needed to be another 2 hours long. And it was. So this was, it had to be long. It could have been a series, should be a series, honestly. And it just kept getting crazier and crazier. And it was entertaining. The way it was shot was wild. The close-up sound effects drove me a little bit crazy. We'll get into the negatives in a little bit, but there aren't many. I mean, it was, yeah, you're right. It had that kind of 80s vibe to it. It was also one of those movies where you just don't really know what time frame it's supposed to be, because it's got these, it's obviously completely based off these like workout kind of TV shows, which aren't really that big of a thing anymore. They were much bigger back in the day, in like early 90s and stuff. But I mean, you have it now. It's just on YouTube. So that there are some of it, it is still out there, but you're not seeing one of these YouTube fitness people hosting a New Year's show of that caliber or something along those lines. It was so wacky and so much fun the entire time. It's just such a wild ride. So many hateable characters in this movie. and some likable and redeemable characters as well. But for the most part, it was just, you hated everyone. Everything that was going on in this movie was just chaotic from start to finish. Everything was super high energy. And it was just kind of this Hollywood production with all these sleaze bags running the show, and everyone's very vocal, and it was wild.
I love the not so subtle gesture of naming the creepy piece of shit Hollywood executive Harvey.
Right. Yeah. There's some of those out there.
It's funny that you bring up the Black Mirror thing, because I meant to mention this, but this has been this premise minus the extremity of it. But the premise has been done a few times before in different ways, where you have a woman who's aging and doesn't want to age, so she finds this mystery beauty product and uses it, and it turns her into something horrible. It's been Twilight Zone. It's been Black Mirror. It's been Guillermo del Toro's recent, Cabinet of Curiosities had an episode like that. So it's been done a few times, but this was in no way like a cookie cutter version of any of that. It was a very, very unique take on it.
Yeah, I overall liked the movie. I'm going to push back a little bit. I did think they could have cut. I'm not saying it needed to be 90 minutes, but they could have shaved a little bit off of this movie, in my opinion. Like, not a lot, but let's get under 2 hours. Just get me under 2 hours on this movie, and I would have been a little bit more happy. Also, not enough nudity is what I will say in this movie.
If you cut out some of the completely necessary workout montages of them doing the show, this movie is about 45 minutes long.
Yes.
You say completely necessary or completely unnecessary?
Oh, completely necessary. It had to be in there.
Yeah, we had to have those.
Yeah, I don't know what you could, before we move off this topic, but I don't know what you could shave out of this movie, because any of it you're shaving off, and I assume when you're saying you could shave out some of it out would be in the beginning, but some of what you'd be shaving out is like really, really, really good acting performances.
Yeah. Oh, the acting across the board was phenomenal.
Well, one of my least favorite actors is in this movie, but because he had to do what he normally does in movies, he was fine.
Dennis Quaid?
Yeah, I hate Dennis Quaid.
He crushed this role. That was a brilliantly acted, brilliantly written character.
Yeah, so it works for the way he acts, because if you ever watch Dennis Quaid, he usually overacts a ton.
Yeah.
In most of his roles to like a laughable degree.
Mm-hmm,
the worst ever was Legion.
Yes,
he was
so bad.
God, I don't know if I've ever seen a worse acting performance. Probably, but it stood out in that movie. So where he had to be over the top, it actually worked in his favor for this movie. So like it's not a negative on this movie, but as soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, not Dennis Quaid. I don't want Dennis Quaid in this movie, but he was fine based on the character that he played. This movie has some stuff in it that I personally just don't like to watch. I don't mind body horror. That's not what I'm talking about. I hate close-up eating, like over.
I knew that was going to bother you. I saw this. I was like, Rob's going to hate this scene. It was gross.
I hate gross eating.
It was so intentional though. Like those.
I know. It
was character building, character development. It was.
I know, but I just hate it so much. Like
it was also important because the food played such a big role in this movie. I mean, it started with the egg splitting, the yolk splitting, right? And then you had the whole backlash with, which this scene didn't really make sense, but she was eating a lot of food, and then a chicken bone or a whole chicken leg, ended up just popping up in her body. Like, what's the science behind that? I mean, I understand
that was a dream.
Oh, was it a dream in the movie?
Yeah, there were a couple of scenes where she had these like mixed, like these there were dreams that were you perceived them as reality at first, but then it was just like
it's what she was dreaming while she was under for her week. So because they have that connection. Mm-hmm. So basically what was going on in that scene is Demi Moore's character was eating the chicken, and because they are connected, they are one. She was dreaming about the chicken to some degree, and that's how it got pulled out of her stomach.
Same with the scene where she was with the guy and she unzips the back of her dress and the guts fall out.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, so these are dreams. All right, yeah, because these were a few of the questions that I had where I'm like, I don't know if this really adds up. Like, so what? He saw the organs fall all over the place and he left a note?
No.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So if these were dreams, because you were getting a lot of like mixed. You don't know what's actually happening. You don't know what is happening. Like the other part that didn't become too clear was, at the beginning, the rules were, you are one, like you are the same person. So I was trying to evaluate, and it became less clear later on in the movie, or completely separate later on in the movie. Maybe it was because she was losing her mind. Was she controlling that younger version of herself? She was. Okay.
Yep.
So later on in the movie, so she just kind of mentally was more into being the younger version of herself and wanted nothing to do with the older one.
Yeah, it was like a symbiosis, but almost like a split personality. Like you're that personality when you're that personality, but when you're not, you're not. So it's basically she is both people, but she's experiencing it as if she's two separate people. Like when she's experiencing herself, she doesn't have the memories of what she did when she was the other person.
Yeah, and you're seeing that build, her reliance on the younger character throughout. It starts with her just watching TV for the entire week. You see the imprint in the chair. She just doesn't want to be that version of herself anymore, which is sort of the message of the entire movie for the most part. Like just wanting to be younger, wanting to be, a better person, like looks wise overall. So that it just escalates from there and there. You see it with the date, you see it with the food later, to your point, Jesse. So like you see that escalation throughout the movie.
Yeah. So and then I think as she was slowly losing her mind, or the side effects from not obeying the rules that she was supposed to obey, you see her slipping more and more out of her mind to a point where she doesn't even know what she was doing, and takes over the younger one for a month at a time. So here was a little bit of a discrepancy that I found. I thought that when she bought that extra day for herself and she came back and her finger was completely rotten, you're like, whoa, that's serious. And then she takes 3 months off, and obviously she comes back as like a bald old lady, hunchback.
Yeah, she looked like the Six Flags guy.
Yeah, she did look like the Six Flags guy. I thought she wasn't deformed enough. Now, I know she was very deformed when she came back, but if you take 1 day and your whole finger is rotten and disgusting, 3 months, she should have looked like what she looked like at the end of the movie, right? It should have that. Now, I understand you had to have a fight sequence, which was ridiculous. But it was at this point in the movie where like it wasn't like, oh, what's going to happen next? You're like, oh, we are spiraling. We are we're going to Funnyland, and we are never returning. And we'll get into the end of the movie in a little bit, but I enjoyed it. But at some point you just kick back and you're like, all right, this is about to be so ridiculous for so long now. But we can get into that a little bit. I thought the old guy at the cafe, I thought that was a particularly creepy scene.
Yeah.
Where he was not necessarily an I can never say this word. Exposition. I always want to say expedition. Yeah. So adventurous.
Exposition, because you're exposing.
Right. So it felt like an exposition dump, but it wasn't really. He was just kind of, it was like almost like a reality check, I would say, more so, of him being like, don't you miss it? Or, like you used to care about you and now you don't. And it was very true. And you could see her going down that path, and she obviously didn't want to come to that realization. She didn't want to talk about it at all. And she was obviously very creeped out by this very creepy old man eating his whipped cream. What the hell is he eating?
But he was the old version of the younger man that introduced her.
Yeah.
So that makes it exceptionally creepy, because that guy probably would have never told her to do it, but his younger self was telling her to do it. So,
So it was exposition, but it was not a dump. It was exposing the other side of the beautiful side that she was originally first attracted to, right? The idea that she could be younger, but then it was like, oh, hey, by the way, there's a negative side to this, and this is it.
Yeah.
I also got some real Shining vibes from the TV studio with the hall. I don't know if they were paying homage to The Shining, or if it just so happened to look a whole lot like, with the carpet and the walls. It really just looks so much like the Overlook.
Well, this was one of my problems with something you brought up earlier, where I think this should have been set in the 80s or early 90s or something like that, but there are iPhones involved in this movie. So I think that's to me, I would have just said it because the story makes so much more sense for that time frame from the way they framed everything. So I thought that was a misstep, in my opinion.
Here's why I don't think it was
intentional. Go ahead, Dave.
Here's why I don't think it was, because they were trying to portray Demi Moore's character as from that era, and they just took it and extrapolated that to this is something that did continue into present day, which is more of a fictional aspect, right? So they just that's why I think why they did it.
Also, kudos to Demi Moore for taking this role. I mean, like
crazy that she.
How do you pitch that to her? Like, hey, listen, we need you to be a formerly beautiful person. Like, that's so tough. Like how do you pitch that? I can only imagine. I can only imagine that Dennis Quaid pitched that. I'm not saying she isn't. I'm just saying that I feel like Dennis Quaid in character had to pitch that role to her. Oh man, that must have been an awkward one, but she crushed it. Just absolutely crushed this role. Like all of the acting across the board was so good in this movie.
Yeah, it really was. It was fantastic. Her in particular. But I think that let's get into some of the scenes that we did like in this movie. So one scene that sticks out for me personally was the scene where she's in the mirror and her teeth are falling out. Now this is after this is after she gets basically almost terminated. So Demi Moore's character almost terminates the whole thing because she's now this hideous old hag, which is irreversible. And she's like, I can't take anymore. So she goes to abort and then changes her mind last minute. And now they're both awake and semi-conscious. And she's in the mirror getting ready for a big event. And one of her teeth falls out. She literally coughs a tooth out. And then she starts freaking out and pulling the rest of her teeth out, which is, don't do it. Take the one tooth that fell out and maybe put it back.
Yeah. That's what I say. You should have jammed them back in there and gone and done your New Year's special.
Special at that point.
But it was sort of a turning point for this character where she realized that, oh shit, this is quite literally all falling apart. And that's when the movie went into, it went where it went. But that scene was particularly disturbing, I thought.
One of the things I liked about the movie as it's not a one particular scene, but it's an evolution throughout the movie, is they did sort of this Dorian Gray thing with the giant photo of Demi Moore, right? Where it's like pristine in the beginning and the photo itself is slowly getting, battered throughout the movie as Demi Moore's character is getting more battered throughout the movie.
Good point. Yeah, to a point where when they get in that big fight, she is smashing her face off of that glass.
Right. And then is used as a mask later in the movie. So I thought the evolution of what they were doing with that, it really made me, I know Dorian Gray's story is, a bit different with the mirror and everything, but it's like reminiscent of that. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And I didn't see many people talking about that aspect of the movie. So I hope that doesn't get lost on too many people as they watch this movie.
Yeah, I hadn't put that together. That's a good call, though. I thought the whole movie was, so typically I hate, and I've mentioned this before, when movies are like, we have a message and we're going to beat you over the head with it. And so many movies are not able to interweave their message into the movie in an artful way. And I think this one actually was. And it's funny to use the word artful because of how absolutely brutal and ridiculous this movie was. But I thought the way that they got their message across while being somewhat ham-fisted was still done in a really artistic way. And the message was obviously that women in Hollywood are treated with huge amounts of fame and respect up until the point where now you look too old, so you're out and something newer is going to come in. And it's always so hypocritical because the movie producer is always some guy, or the movie executive always some guy like Harvey in this movie and Harvey in real life. That's just some old disgusting piece of shit that says you're not pretty enough anymore.
Right.
Which is kind of sorry, finish your point.
No, that was the end of the point. So
I was gonna say, which is kind of funny because every time I see Dennis Quaid, I'm like, oh, Harrison Ford is in this movie. Oh no, he's too young. He is the younger version, in my opinion. I think he looks a lot like Harrison Ford. Every time I'm like, oh, sick, Harrison Ford. Wait, no.
He wishes he was Harrison Ford. He wishes he could act half as good as Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, nice job on the message of this movie. It was well done.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's actually what I read a few interviews with the director and Demi Moore talking about this movie after I watched it, and I think that's what kind of sold Demi Moore on this movie, was to deliver that message. And I know you're specifying with, actresses, but I think that their message was like more of a universal one, was what they were going for. And
I don't think so.
Well, I can tell you it is because I read their interviews, so that's what they were going for. And
You think that male actors are treated the same as
no,
female?
I'm saying women as a whole. I'm not saying just.
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
saying as a
Yeah,
profession.
never mind. Gotcha.
I'm not saying as a profession. Sorry, I should have clarified that a little bit more. They were talking. I was curious of their take of the ending because I wanted to see if what they were going for at the ending was what I was going for. What I was interpreting from the ending, and it sort of was. It
I
basically.
was hoping that they're and you could stop me if I'm correct. I was hoping that their approach to the ending was like, I don't know.
No.
Wasn't that fun?
I mean, their approach to the ending was basically when they're this hideous monster, she was finally just felt free enough to go just be herself in front of everybody, type of deal, and finally show her true self, which did
I
not.
fucking love the end of this movie so much.
I knew.
sucks if
I was
that's
watching
people-
as I was watching this, Dave. I was like, "This is such a Dave movie. This is." I know Dave's going to give us the highest score out of all of us. I know he's going to love it. So, yeah.
Yep.
Let's talk about the ending. We've
Let's talk about
alluded
the
to
ending.
it a few times. So
this
who wants
is
to kick it off.
so this movie. It got to the point where she killed her older self, right? Demi Moore's character has been beaten to death.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the runtime and I'm looking at the amount of time that's left in this movie. I'm like, where do you go from here? Like, what the fuck? Like, how much ending can this movie have? And I found out a lot. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I thought it was awesome the way that when her face started falling apart in that mirror and she ran back to the hotel room in a complete act of desperation and was like, and shoots the activator again, saying like, make me something new again. And then she just, almost like a flashback to that first scene where she crawls out of herself. And then she does it again in this, and you don't really know what it's going to be. You just like, oh, it's going to be another young version of herself. That's interesting. And then you like get the POV of what crawled out, and it's like crooked and breathing funny, but you don't see what it looks like yet. But you're like, oh my God, this is about to be fucking awesome. And it's literally, she morphed into a combination of the two people, but like in the most disgusting blobbed together fashion. Like she had a jaw on her chest, she had tits on her head, and she had a face on her back and an arm coming. It was awesome. It was like vintage body horror. It really, like, I had to, because I didn't, when I watched this movie, I'm like, who the hell directed this? I had to go make sure it wasn't David Cronenberg who directed it, because it really felt like a Cronenberg movie, and it wasn't. But
for those of you out here who have played the new Black Ops Zombie 6, there is a creature in Terminus that comes out, and it is this. So Dave, you know the one that'll reach out and grab you? I don't know if you've played too much Terminus. So this is the other map.
We're gonna go play it after this.
But I'm gonna take you to Terminus so you can see this exact. It's got faces all over the place. It is this monster. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I'll pull up an image of it, so it's something that people can relate to here.
It reminded me of a Resident Evil monster too, because this is what a lot of the Resident Evil monsters end up morphing into by like mid to end game. So yeah, it is.
Also, the end creature in another movie that I rated really high last year.
Yeah.
I don't want to give spoilers, but yeah.
Yeah. So it is. This is what's not for me usually. Like I mean, it's fine, but it just, to me, sometimes this is just a little too much, but it was fine.
So this horrible creature now is walking around the bathroom, and I was like, please do what I think you're going to do. Please fucking do what I think you're going to do. Please put on the dress and go back to the event. That's exactly what it did. I'm like, yes, I knew it was going to happen. And of course we have to just ignore the fact that she would have to walk into the building and walk through production and everything.
Yeah, and that was I'm like, so she's gonna get stopped at the door. And then I was like, wait a second, no, this is fine.
No, this is.
Well, she had the mask on.
Yeah.
Yes. That's just so ridiculous. Here's the monster from Black Ops.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
And if you look closely at like one of the cut scenes that I'll show you later, there's like a face on the top of it as well. It's just like this. It was crazy that it came out almost at the same time.
That is great. But so this monster goes to this event and it's in front of everybody, and I don't think this was an accident. I don't know if you guys caught this, but this scene was basically a scene from King Kong after they brought King Kong back, and he's like, eighth wonder of the world, and they bring him in front of all the the people, and it was a very similar setting to this movie, and all the people are like, shoot the monster, and they're like, no. It's almost the exact same scene from King Kong. And earlier in the movie, when Dennis Quaid walks into the bathroom, he didn't realize she was hiding in the cell. He's like, she's too old, I want her out of here. She's in one movie 100 years ago, King Kong of all movies, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So I was like, that couldn't have been an accident.
Yeah, definitely a callback.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again, because in so many scenes with her and Dennis Quaid, when he's just ranting and raving about these things or that, she doesn't say a word.
Mhm.
And I do wonder if she says a word to him the entire movie, because in like the second, third, and fourth times that it's Demi Moore's character, not the younger version, she doesn't say a word. She just sits there with this blank look, just watching this idiot just rant and rave while he's eating shrimp or whatever. I got to go back and watch and see if she ever
Those weren't
actually.
shrimp, Jesse, those were crawfish. You should know that. We had crawfish.
Oh yeah. He was eating like crawfish. They were big though, like jumbo crawfish.
Oh, I thought they were shrimp. I thought
they were just shrimp. Honestly, they were way too big.
Yeah, I think they were shrimp. It was gross. Hated it.
Yeah.
Absolutely despised it, to be honest.
Yeah, he made whatever that sauce that was probably delicious. He made it look disgusting.
Yeah. Made me never want to eat shrimp again. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the movie doesn't even end here. And this is like the most ridiculous, because it's, again, we're like on the third ending of this movie. I'm like, what was it? And I didn't want it to end. I was like, this is phenomenal. And then, of course, everyone's freaking out, and some guy comes up and he hits her with a microphone stand or something and like knocks one of her heads off. This was after her head split open and a boob fell out onto the ground.
Yep.
But then
they just had to put one more boob in this movie.
But then there's just blood spraying everywhere to like heavy metal. And it's just an absolute bloodbath of a scene. And I loved every fucking second of it. It was so good. And
yeah,
then,
that was just so ridiculous. Just the spraying of blood. I'm like, you just wanted to do this. You just wanted to spray everyone blood.
You guys haven't even mentioned Demi Moore's terrifying face on the back of this creature.
So well, this led to the best ending of any movie of all time.
This is the best ending in any movie of all time. It was so good, because we're even not over here. So she leaves the event, everybody left screaming, everyone's covered in blood, and this monstrosity is just walking down the street of Hollywood, and it trips and falls, and just guts spill everywhere. And from the pile of guts crawls Demi Moore's face in the shape of a little like bloody starfish thing, just slithering with her face on the top, and just slithers over. It slithers over to her Hollywood star, and just perfectly places itself on the star, and that's the end of the movie. It's like,
it was phenomenal.
Shit. It was so good.
Well, did you guys catch that they showed us the entire movie in the opening scene? So think about it. They start by showing her getting her star on the Walk of Fame, right? Mm-hmm. And it shows the evolution of the star being beautiful, everybody loving the star, wanting to take pictures with it, right? And it goes to starting to be ignored, cracked, starting to age. And it ends with the guy spilling a shitload of ketchup all over it. And that's the face at the end of the movie.
Oh shit. Good
call.
Another thing, I don't know if anyone, I'm not saying that I'm the first to pick up on it. I'm sure there's plenty that have, but I haven't seen that point brought up either. But as I watched it, I'm like, oh, that's the opening of that's the entire movie. That opening scene is the entire movie.
A couple of good observations here, Rob.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could talk probably more. We could go more into detail about this movie, but I think if this is your type of movie, go watch it. It's absolutely worth the watch. I think that this was it's very long, 2 hours, 21 minutes. It kept my attention the entire time. And you guys, if you listen to our reviews, you know, I am a real stickler for horror movies being 90 minutes. And there's some exceptions, but for the most part, and the exception to the rule is body horror and Aliens, because it's just there's never too much monster in those kinds of movies, because they're always different and evolving. So I think I highly recommend this movie.
Yeah, I think the thing you have to know is if you are into body horror movies to watch this one. Now, I like it better than most body horror movies, but body horror is not my favorite of the subgenre of horror, which is fine because everyone has their own things, right? I still enjoyed this movie, but there are a few things that I just is not my cup of tea within a horror movie. I don't like overly gross out stuff, and there are a few points in this movie that are just like gross to be gross, which is never.
But what's funny is that those gross to be gross scenes aren't the body horror scenes for you. It's the people eating and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, there was some of the stuff with like the body and like the pussing stuff
The
coming
spine
out.
injections. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I
You're
don't
gonna
know.
love the Terrifier for the next movie that we review.
Yeah. Well, if you're trying to figure out if you want to watch this movie at this point, I'd compare it to something like The Fly or Scanners or something like that. But if you're okay with those kinds of movies, cool.
You know what's funny is there was one scene where there was a fly floating in a wine glass and she's just watching it. And I'm like, I wonder if this is a reference to The Fly.
It could have been. I do feel like
they're paying homage to a bunch of horror movies in this. We had mentioned a few of them, and I'm telling you, man, the layout of this movie just looked like it was paying homage to The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining would be a weird one to pay homage to this one, but maybe.
Well, it obviously had nothing to do with it, but you can't look at that hallway with those carpets in the walls, and then when they showed the hallway again with blood dripping down it. Oh man, they had to have been, but not in like a rip-off way. Obviously, it had nothing to do with the Shining. They weren't trying to be The Shining,
tributary way.
Yeah, exactly. But I liked it. Shall we hop into some ratings?
Let's do it, Dave. You're gonna have the highest score, so I want to hear it and see if I get your score correct.
Oh, it's a 5.
Oh,
Easy 5.
I didn't think you were gonna give it a 5. I was thought you were gonna give it a 4.8, but
here's why. No, this is a 5 because first of all, I can't think of anything I didn't like about it. I don't think I had a single negative about this movie. If you held me down and said, "Give me a negative," I'd say maybe that scene where the back of her dress unzips and the guts fell out. CGI was a little bit CGI-y. That's it. But
yeah,
who cares? It wasn't bad CGI. It was just like I noticed that it was CGI. I was like, you could have not done CGI there.
Yeah, there was also like that motorcycle scene where like the motorcycle went straight at the camera. That was just brutally bad CGI.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
No, I don't really have any negatives. And I think this movie is going to be a huge cult classic. And I think it's going to be something that ages very well and that people are going to talk about. One of the.
I see what you did there.
Shit, I didn't do that on purpose. But I think is one that people are going to look back and be like, that was a fucking amazing movie of all time. So I want to make sure that I'm on the record that this is a 5-star and probably my favorite of 2024 so far.
Yeah, I've also got it at a 5, actually. I can't think of anything wrong with this movie. I enjoyed it a lot.
I have it at 3.8. I don't think it's a bad. It's fine. It's a good score. It's not fully my type of movie. Some of the CGI stuff that you brought up, I really hated any of the CGI with eyes in this movie.
Oh, I thought it looked great. That looked so cool.
Oh, I didn't.
It was well done too. It was like
I didn't think so. Didn't like it. Didn't.
I loved the CGI.
I thought it was great. And you know, like I'm not big on body horror either. But and I know this shouldn't affect me whatsoever, but having just come off watching Terrifier 3 and then watching this movie, I was like, this is easy. this is nothing. So we'll get into that on our next horror movie review. But I thought it was so much different. I know that the concept has been done plenty of times before, right? And we talked about these
sort of like the
kind of, but take drug, make you young again. It's
it goes wrong.
Yeah. So
goes back to hundreds and hundreds of years ago in real life with Elizabeth Bathory trying to do similar situation.
People have always been looking for that fountain of youth elixir, whatever you can do to make it look young. And now you got a bunch of people walking around looking like ventriloquist dummies. So we haven't found a perfect solution yet. This one, obviously, the substance had some errors as well. But either way, dude, I think this movie is so much fun.
Yeah, it was a fun movie. Definitely watch it if you can handle it, because it's not a movie everyone can handle.
No,
for sure.
Body horror is it's a genre. It's a subgenre for sure, and people either like it or they do not. And I absolutely love it.
I didn't know going into it. Like I knew the basic premise of the movie, but I didn't know what the movie was, so I didn't know it was fully a body horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't know either. I went into it completely blind, but I did see the poster, which the one that I saw was Demi Moore laying down with the stitches all down her back. I'm like, all right, we're getting something gory here.
Yeah, I didn't. So when I went in today, I pulled it up and it was just a picture of Demi Moore looking at herself in the mirror. And to the point where I'm like 15, 20 minutes in this movie, I'm like, I don't know if I'm watching the right movie.
Oh, I panicked too. Yep.
I don't know if
didn't
this is even a horror movie. I almost texted you, Rob, like, is this even a horror movie? But I was like, I'll just.
So
I did panic as well.
So yes, it is a horror movie.
So a little peek behind the curtain. We're doing this movie because I have to review it on the other show that I do. And the guy that picked it, I knew he didn't like body horror stuff. He's always said that he's not into gory. So he had no idea what this movie was, but he had just heard people talk about it. So when he said it, he was like, The Substance last week. I was like, yep, let's do that one. Because I knew the text that we're going to start coming through, because not that I knew what it was about, but I had seen people react that it was crazy. So I'm like, I had an inkling that there was some stuff that happened in this movie. So yeah, the texts have been flying back and forth that he can't believe that he picked this movie. So,
and will amend Rob's score. He gave it a 4.5.
No, 3.8. I will never give a movie with Dennis Quaid above a 4. So
Oh,
You did a good job.
You did fine.
I don't care.
Exactly what it was supposed to do.
It's principle. Sometimes it's just principle. Sometimes
What if it was Harrison Ford? You never know.
Harrison Ford can get a higher score because he's a good actor.
That's true.
You don't think it's more impressive when a bad actor does a good job?
No, because he only did a good job because he's a bad actor. He was just doing what he would normally
supposed
do.
to be a bad actor in the movie.
They were like, if this is a drama, this is how he would have played it too. So like that's the problem.
It is nice to see a studio actually recognize, like, all right, we need someone to be an insufferable, absolute asshole in this movie. All right, get the insufferable asshole in here.
Anyways, that's going to do it for our review of The Substance. What did you guys think of this movie? Did you give it a 5 like Jesse and Dave? It's a pretty big score. Were you more in the 3.8 or did you absolutely hate it? Did you give it a 1? Let us know in the comments. Shoot us an email. Let us know in Discord. I'm Rob. That's Dave and Jesse. We will catch you next time here at HTGS Reviews.